Picture this. You just checked your bank account, and for the first time in your entire adult life, it says five figures, $10,000. And for like a week, maybe 2 weeks, you feel genuinely incredible. You sleep better, you stop doing that thing where you refresh your bank app before every purchase just to make sure you won't get declined. You stop doing the mental math at the grocery store. You stop having that low-level hum of anxiety that you'd been carrying around so long you forgot it was even there. And then something weird happens. Nothing. Like nothing changes. You wake up Monday and you still go to the same job, you still eat roughly the same food, you're still kinda stressed, just about different stuff, and you're sitting there thinking, okay, I did the thing they told me to do. I built the emergency fund. I hit the number. So why doesn't this feel like I thought it would? My name is Marcus, and I think about money and human psychology way more than is probably healthy. And the thing I want to talk to you about today is what actually happens after $10,000. Because most people hit that milestone, feel incredible for about 3 months, and then quietly stall out for years without understanding why. Today, I want to explain exactly why that happens and what you actually have to change to keep moving. So if that sounds useful, subscribe, hit the like button. Let's go. Here's the thing nobody tells you about hitting $10,000. There's a psychological hangover that comes right after it. Not because you did anything wrong, but because your brain has been running on a very specific kind of fuel to get you there, and that fuel is fear. When you had nothing saved, every financial decision had this background hum of anxiety attached to it. What if something goes wrong? What if I lose my job? What if my car breaks down and I can't get to work and I lose my job and I can't pay rent and everything falls apart? That fear, as unpleasant as it was doing something really useful. It was keeping you motivated. It was making you say no to things. It was the engine. And then you hit $10,000 and the fear goes quiet, which is great. That's the whole point. But here's the problem nobody mentions. If you never replace the fear with something else, you just turned off your engine. And a car with no engine sitting on a flat road will coast for a while, but eventually it stops. This is what I call the plateau. And it's sneaky because it doesn't feel like failure. You still have your $10,000. You're not going backwards. You're just kind of hovering, making slightly looser decisions than 6 months ago. A dinner out you wouldn't have done before, a subscription you forgot to cancel, a weekend thing that was kind of expensive but you've been working hard, so whatever. None of these are disasters, but they're quietly eating the momentum you spent months building. The really uncomfortable truth is that most people live in this plateau for years, not because they're lazy or irresponsible, but because nobody explained that getting to the next level requires a completely different psychological engine than the one that got you to $10,000. So, what is that engine? What actually keeps you moving when the fear is gone? It's purpose. And I know that sounds like something off a motivational poster, but bear with me because there's something real here. When you were saving your first $10,000, you were saving away from something, away from panic, away from nothing. That works, but it only works until you feel safe. Once you feel safe, saving away from something loses its pull completely. The people who break through the plateau have figured out how to save towards something, a specific, concrete thing that actually matters to them. Maybe it's a down payment on a house. Maybe it's starting a business. Maybe it's retiring before 50 or taking a year off to travel. The specific goal almost doesn't matter. What matters is that there's a magnet pulling them forward, instead of just a memory of fear pushing them from behind. Without a target, the next milestone is just a bigger version of what you already have. With a real target, it becomes a launch pad, and the difference between those two things is enormous. Now, let's talk about what actually changes when you reach that next level, because I want to be honest with you. The change is less dramatic on the surface than what you felt at $10,000. You're not going to have some moment in the grocery store where you almost cry. That already happened. You're past that. The change is quieter, but in a lot of ways, it's bigger. Here's the simplest way I can explain it. $10,000 is a shield. The next milestone is a weapon. Your emergency fund's entire job is to protect you, to absorb hits, to stand between you and financial disaster, and that is genuinely incredible. Having a shield is the difference between staying in the game and getting knocked out of it. But a shield doesn't move you forward. You can defend with a shield indefinitely and never gain a single inch of ground. You build wealth with capital that works, capital that gets deployed, capital that generates returns and compounds over time. And when you have enough of it, for the first time, money can do something meaningful on its own. You're looking at a real down payment on a rental property. You have enough to seriously fund a small business. You have enough in the stock market that compound growth starts showing up in ways that feel real instead of theoretical. Not like, oh wow, my $50 monthly contribution grew by $3.40, but like watching your portfolio move in amounts bigger than your weekly paycheck. And that moment, the first time your money earns more in a month than you did from working, that specific moment rewires something in your brain permanently. You stop thinking exclusively about how to earn more, and you start thinking about how to deploy better. Both matter, but most people go their entire lives only thinking about the first one and never discovering the second one exists. There's also this thing that develops where every dollar you spend starts feeling different, not anxious, more strategic. You start experiencing opportunity cost as an actual felt sense, like you're thinking about buying something and there's this quiet background calculation running where part of your brain is noting, okay, but if this $1,500 stayed invested for 15 years, it becomes around $4,000. You might still buy the thing, but you're making a conscious choice now, not just reacting. And making choices instead of reacting is one of the underrated transformations in personal finance. You also start caring about things you genuinely didn't care about before, tax efficiency being the big one, which sounds boring until you realize the average person loses between $5,000 and $15,000 every year to taxes they didn't have to pay with a little bit of planning. It's small savings amounts, it's almost irrelevant, but once your money actually has weight, inefficiency has a real cost you can feel. You get curious about Roth accounts and HSAs and capital gain strategy, not because you became a finance nerd, because the numbers now actually matter. And here's something nobody talks about because it's socially a little awkward. When you build real savings, you start outgrowing certain conversations. The friend always chasing the next get-rich-quick thing, the coworker who thinks the lottery is a retirement strategy, the family member convinced there's one stock that's going to change everything. These aren't bad people, but your thinking has moved somewhere they haven't. You're playing a longer game, and that gap can feel lonely if you're not intentional about finding people who are thinking the same way you are. Now let's talk about the identity piece, because this is honestly the most important part of this entire video. The attitude that saves your first milestone is a saver mindset, built entirely on restraint. Cut the expenses, skip the splurge, say no more than you say yes, white-knuckle your way through the month. That works, I'm not knocking it, but it has a hard ceiling. Because saving is about protecting what you have, and there's only so much you can cut. You can't optimize your grocery bill to zero. You can't cut your rent to nothing. Savings-based thinking eventually hits a wall, and most people just stop there assuming they've done everything possible. They haven't. They've just reached the limit of one approach. The mindset that builds real wealth is completely different. A wealth builder isn't asking, how do I spend less? They're asking, where does this money do the most good? They think about flow. Money comes in, money gets allocated with intention, money gets positioned to generate more money. Less focused on what they can eliminate, more focused on what they can build. This also changes how you think about your career. A saver sees their job as the source of money to protect. A wealth builder sees their career as an asset to develop. They're asking, what skills can I add that increase my market value? What moves compound over time? They're playing offense with their professional life the same way they play offense with their money. And honestly, the thing that surprises people most is that this mindset just feels better. Scarcity thinking is exhausting in a way you don't fully realize until you're out of it. Constantly calculating what you can't afford, what you have to say no to, what would wreck the budget. That's a draining way to live, even when it's working. Abundance thinking, which you can only genuinely access once you have real resources behind you, is built on possibility instead of restriction, and possibility feels completely different in your body than survival does. Now, let me give you the piece I think matters most practically. Your first $10,000 is where the panic stops. What comes next is where the actual game starts. The path between them isn't complicated. It's consistent action guided by a real purpose you actually believe in, combined with an identity shift from someone who saves to someone who builds, from defense to offense, from protecting what you have to deploying what you have strategically. Most people never make that shift, not because they lack discipline or intelligence, but because nobody explained it needed to happen. Nobody told them the rules change after $10,000. Nobody said the engine that got you here will run out of fuel and you need to install a new one before it does. Consider this that conversation. You already proved the hardest thing. You built something from nothing. That required something real. Now it's time to build on top of it. The person who does that isn't some future version of you who has everything figured out. It's you right now deciding that $10,000 wasn't the finish line, it was the starting line. The emergency fund got you safe. Now it's time to get free. If this was useful, hit the like button and subscribe. I put out content every week on how money actually works in real life. Not theory, but the real psychology of building something that lasts. Drop a comment and tell me where you are right now. Working toward $10,000, stuck in the plateau, or already building toward the next level. I read every single one. See you in the next one.